Every wrestling era needs one rivalry sturdy enough to hold the roof up, and from 2007 to 2010, WWE only had one that could do it. John Cena versus Randy Orton.
Oh my God, no, you gotta be kidding me! Cena here and RKO in midair! Amazing!
Over 100 matches between them across their careers. 4 straight pay-per-view main events in a single stretch. A company that kept building around a suspended man because it had nobody else to put across from its champion. Most retrospectives call this a dream match. 2 once-in-a-generation talents who happened to click. It wasn't. By the middle of the decade, this was simply what WWE had left to work with. Call it the fallback feud. The pairing that carried the company through its most fragile stretch, because every other option ran out first. Start in Louisville, Kentucky, in a wrestling school most fans never think about. Ohio Valley Wrestling ran WWE's developmental pipeline in the early 2000s, and the 2002 class is still considered one of the most stacked developmental groups WWE ever ran through. Brock Lesnar was in that room, Dave Batista was in that room, and 2 kids who couldn't have been more different were learning the business next to each other every night. John Cena wrestled as the prototype, a stiff, robotic gimmick built entirely around his physique, because at that point, his physique was the only thing anybody in the company trusted. He was a former bodybuilder, muscling his way through a craft he hadn't found yet. Randy Orton didn't need to find anything. He was the son of Cowboy Bob Orton and the grandson of Bob Orton Sr., 3rd generation, and it showed in the ring before it showed anywhere else. He moved like someone who'd been watching wrestling his whole life, because he had. Cena worked in straight lines, absorbing punishment and building toward one big rally. Orton worked more methodically, controlling the pace and reading an opponent before either man had a national audience watching. Cornette booked both of them conservatively on purpose, sticking mostly to basic backdrops, drop kicks, and slams, instead of anything that might expose a hole in either man's game this early. But the contrast between a power wrestler and a natural in-ring storyteller was already obvious to anyone paying attention. Nobody wrote that into them. It was already there before either man had a character. Cornette himself caught a young Orton on tape at the announcer's desk, not knowing the microphone was live, saying he was only there for the $750 a week. Cena, meanwhile, was close to being cut before Stephanie McMahon caught him freestyling on a tour bus, and a rapper gimmick got born out of pure desperation to keep him employed. Cena wasn't handed a hero to play. He had to find one, and he found it by accident. They wrestled each other for the first time in a tag match on October 27, 2001. Orton teaming with Mark Henry against Cena and Rico Constantino, a forgettable 4-man affair nobody in the building thought twice about. It didn't need to mean anything yet. Cena picked up the OVW Heavyweight Championship and the OVW Southern Tag Team title with Constantino, grinding out a resume the hard way. Orton picked up the OVW Hardcore Championship twice, over Mr. Black and then Flash Flanagan, without ever needing to prove he belonged the way Cena did. Even the titles they won told the same story, before either man said a word on national television. That difference between them already tells you a lot about what their rivalry would eventually become. Orton's SmackDown debut came first, a win over Hardcore Holly on April 25, 2002, before he moved over to Raw. Cena's television arrival landed that June, answering an open challenge from Kurt Angle and introducing himself with the words that would define his early run: ruthless aggression. A shoulder injury sidelined Orton not long after his call-up, and WWE filled the gap with Randy News Network vignettes, narcissistic in-house interview segments that built organic heel heat before he'd wrestled a single meaningful match back. That heat is what got him into Evolution with Triple H, Ric Flair, and Batista, and by 2004, he was the youngest World Heavyweight Champion the company had ever crowned, 24 years old, entirely manufactured by the stable around him. Cena spent those same years grinding out a rapper persona on SmackDown that started as a joke and turned into the most organic connection the brand had, winning the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 21 on the strength of crowd reaction alone. Cena wasn't WWE's chosen superhero from the start. He became one. Super Cena is the name people gave him years later, after the fact, once it was already true. WWE built each of them into a hit on his own first, and only put them in the same ring once both could carry a brand by themselves. Their first main roster singles match wasn't supposed to mean anything. On November 14, 2005, WWE Champion John Cena faced Randy Orton on a Raw taped in Minneapolis, the night after Eddie Guerrero died. Orton walked out with his real father, Bob Orton, at ringside, and the match ended in a disqualification when Bob got involved. Nobody remembers the finish. People remember that it happened at all, on a night when the entire show was built around grief instead of storyline, kayfabe barely holding together because nobody in that building was fully in character. Most historians don't count it as the actual start of anything, and they're right not to. It's a strange footnote, two future icons sharing a ring for the first time, on a night when neither of them was really thinking about wrestling. For the next year, they shared a ring only in tag formats, most notably a 6-person match in 2006, where Orton, Edge, and Lita beat Cena, Carlito, and Trish Stratus. Nothing that asked either man to carry the other. WWE was still stalling. It just didn't know yet how much it was about to need them to stop. This is the part that never makes the highlight reel, but it's what explains everything that happens next. WWE launched its Talent Wellness Program in February 2006, 3 months after Eddie Guerrero died, with real testing and a 3-strike system behind it. The Chris Benoit tragedy the following year only intensified the scrutiny the policy was already operating under. Either way, that policy quietly shrank the list of men WWE could reliably build around as Cena's next challenger. Mr. Kennedy was being groomed for a WrestleMania main event and a storyline as Vince McMahon's secret son. A suspension ended that before it started. Jeff Hardy had the merchandise numbers to headline anything, and WWE kept pulling back from building around him because it couldn't trust him not to fail a test. One by one, the company's other options disappeared, not through bad booking, but through bad luck and worse choices that had nothing to do with wrestling ability. Within this stretch, John Cena never publicly failed a wellness test or missed time because of one. He showed up for every media appearance the company asked of him, and never once put McMahon in the position of explaining a suspension to the press. In an era where WWE was terrified of building around anyone it couldn't fully trust, that made him the safest bet in the building, and the safest bet became the champion by default as much as by talent. Randy Orton was the opposite problem, and WWE absorbed the risk anyway instead of walking away from him. He was suspended twice in 2006 alone, once for what the company called unprofessional conduct, once for his first real strike under the new wellness policy. 2 suspensions in 1 year, right as WWE was deciding who its next decade belonged to, and it kept building around him regardless. Edge, Batista, Brock Lesnar, and The Rock were all gone from the main event picture at different points across these years, through injury or departure, and Orton stood out as one of the few heels WWE could realistically stand across from Cena at that level. WWE didn't have the luxury of cutting loose a problem employee, when he was also one of its only credible villains. So WWE kept absorbing the risk because it had nowhere else to turn, handcuffing itself to the only pairing it had left standing. Then WWE added another restriction. In July 2008, WWE officially went TV PG. Blood and profanity became heavily restricted, and most of the tools Ruthless Aggression era heels had used to signal real danger got harder to use. Orton's answer was the punt kick, a move that implied a concussion and a hospital visit without a drop of blood on screen, and it became the signature of a character built entirely around psychological menace. And at that point, it became bigger than who won on a given Sunday. Cena was the version of WWE that could go on a talk show without anyone flinching. Orton was the version for the audience that never signed up for that, and wanted the company to admit it. Every time they wrestled, it felt like WWE was putting 2 completely different versions of itself against each other. If any of this is landing for you, hit subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel keep making these. Every injury, every swerve, happens inside a company that had already backed itself into a corner. That's the mood heading into 2007. By early 2007, Cena had been champion long enough to become genuinely divisive, cheered by kids and booed by grown men in the same building on the same night, a split reaction that got branded Super Cena online like it was an insult. Orton had spent the winter shedding the cocky legend killer character for something colder, less about ego and more about menace. And WWE finally had a reason to put the two of them on a collision course. They'd cross paths on television that spring too, on February 19th. Neither match meant to resolve anything. That pay-per-view was Backlash, on April 29th, 2007, a fatal 4-way for the title against Edge and Shawn Michaels, and the match earned 4.5 stars from Dave Meltzer, a genuine hit. The finish did real work under the surface. Michaels hit sweet chin music on Cena, Cena collapsed onto Orton, and Cena pinned him, almost by accident. Orton lost without ever taking a clean finisher, protected for the bigger fight still coming. A week later, on May 7th, Cena and Orton crossed paths again on Raw, a match that ended in a no contest after 4 minutes, when Edge ran in and speared Cena, with Shawn Michaels making the save and clearing both Edge and Orton out. It was basically a way to keep the two of them connected on weekly television, while the company built towards SummerSlam. At Judgment Day that same month, WWE kept them apart on purpose. Orton tied up with Michaels, while Cena defended the title against the Great Khali, delaying the one-on-one collision the whole build had been pointing toward. That collision finally arrived at SummerSlam on August 26th, their first ever one-on-one pay-per-view match, sold as a genuine first for two men who debuted 5 years earlier. Orton hit Cena with 3 unprompted RKOs in the weeks leading in, establishing the whole dynamic before the bell rang. Cena absorbed punishment. Orton waited for one mistake. Inside the match itself, Orton worked over Cena's head and neck with methodical headlocks and strikes, selling the story that Cena would have to survive on will alone. And Cena played it perfectly, looking groggy and delayed just enough that the crowd believed the RKO might actually land. Cena won clean with the FU, later renamed the Attitude Adjustment, catching Orton mid-punt kick attempt, in front of a genuine big fight atmosphere, the kind a split, invested crowd generates when half the building wants one man dead. Cena had beaten him clean, and Orton's character couldn't just let that go. So WWE made it personal. Orton attacked Cena's real father, John Cena Sr., at ringside on Raw, a punt kick to the head of a man in his 60s. And it worked exactly as intended. Cena's honorable, disciplined character cracked. At Unforgiven on September 16th, he stopped following the rules mid-match, refused to break a corner beatdown, and got himself intentionally disqualified after 7 minutes of pure rage. Cena kept the title on a technicality, and immediately locked Orton in the STFU so his own father could kick him in the head. It's one of the most heavily criticized finishes of the entire rivalry, a pay-per-view main event ending on a deliberate DQ, and the story worked anyway. The following night on Raw, WWE doubled down and booked Orton against Cena Sr. directly, and Orton won. The next chapter was supposed to be a last man standing blow-off at No Mercy in October. Then Cena got injured. On October 1st, during a routine hip toss against Mr. Kennedy, Cena tore his pectoral muscle completely off the bone. He finished the segment, sold a scripted post-match beatdown from Orton, and found out from a doctor afterward that his championship reign was over. WWE stripped him of the title on ECW television, ending a 380-day run, and handed the vacant belt straight to Orton at No Mercy. Orton lost it to Triple H in the opening match that same night, and won it back hours later through a rematch clause. Cena's absence didn't end the rivalry. For the first time, Orton had to prove he could carry the main event scene without Cena there. Cena's recovery timeline said late summer 2008. Cena had other plans. He returned unannounced at the Royal Rumble on January 27th, entering at number 30 in Madison Square Garden and winning the whole thing by eliminating Triple H, earning a title shot for WrestleMania 24 months ahead of schedule. He didn't wait. The next night on Raw, he cashed in the win immediately against Orton at No Way Out in February. Orton beat him there without ever losing, and that ended up defining their entire year. Recognizing Cena's usual comeback building, he slapped referee Mike Chioda and got himself disqualified on purpose, kept the title on a technicality, and looked exactly as cowardly as his character was supposed to. WWE patched the loose end with a non-title rematch the next night. Triple H as guest referee, Cena won, and that result upgraded WrestleMania 24 into a triple threat. WrestleMania followed the same pattern. Triple H pedigreed Cena and went for the pin. Orton punted Triple H in the skull mid-cover and stole the win over a man he'd never touched, retaining the title on a show that drew 1,058,000 buys without pinning either challenger clean. Backlash in April reset the board, with Triple H finally winning a fatal four-way, JBL added to the mix, and a May 12th rematch with JBL as guest referee gave Orton one more inconclusive win, before both men scattered into separate stories for the rest of the year. Wrestling media started calling it the Age of Orton, outthinking and outmaneuvering the two biggest stars in the company, without needing to be the best wrestler in the room, just the smartest opportunist in it. But look at the whole year, and Orton's cleverness isn't even the most interesting part. Neither one beat the other clean the whole year. Every finish ran through a loophole, a distraction, or somebody else's finisher. It's a company keeping its two most trusted assets forever on the edge of a resolution. It wasn't ready to give the fans yet. By 2009, WWE had even fewer options. Edge was hurt, Batista was splitting time between injury and SmackDown, Triple H and Shawn Michaels had been parked in the tag division as DX. Whatever depth WWE thought it had built through the middle of the decade was gone, and Raw's main event scene came down to the same two names it had been circling since 2005. Orton built himself a faction to compensate, Legacy, Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase Jr., second-generation guys he could use as shields. Rhodes and DiBiase had proven their loyalty earlier that year, helping Orton win the 2009 Royal Rumble and standing behind him at WrestleMania 25. And by summer, they were fully installed as the muscle keeping his title reign alive whenever the numbers turned against him. Orton needed them, and resented needing them in equal measure, shoving and berating both men between matches while leaning on them to survive odds he couldn't beat alone. It was basically the same problem WWE had at the top of the card: use whoever's left standing. The company leaned on all three of them for 4 straight pay-per-view main events, August through October. Not because the story had more to say, because there was nothing else standing. And out of that pressure came the best run of matches these two ever had. SummerSlam on August 23rd wasn't their best work, Orton getting himself disqualified on purpose, then counted out on purpose, before a legacy plant in the crowd let him steal the RKO he needed to retain. It's the one match in this stretch most fans skip on a rewatch. But it set up the match that actually defines this whole era. 3 weeks later, Breaking Point fixed almost everything that had gone wrong with SummerSlam in one match. And it's the best thing these two ever did together. An I Quit contest, Legacy banned from ringside on penalty of Orton losing the belt outright if they showed up, which meant Orton had nothing left but himself and a kendo stick. He used it, beating Cena with a Singapore cane and a steel chair while the man was handcuffed to the ropes, pouring water over him and asking if he was ready to quit. Cena spat it back in his face instead of answering. The finish is the whole rivalry compressed into one image. Cena worked himself free, stole the handcuff key off Orton's neck, and cuffed his own wrist to Orton's, taking away the one thing Orton's character always had: the ability to run. Trapped, Orton screamed "I quit" into an improvised STF built on nothing but stolen handcuffs. Meltzer rated it 4.25 stars, the best of their entire pre-2010 catalog. And it's not a coincidence that the best match came from the one built on Orton having no way out. Hell in a Cell followed on October 4th, technically the rematch clause the title change demanded. Orton used the cage mesh itself as a weapon, trapping Cena against the wall for long stretches, and countered with his signature middle rope DDT before the finish. 21 minutes of steel and chairs ended with a botched submission, the referee knocked cold mid-tap-out, and Orton stealing the win back with an RKO and then a punt kick once Cena kicked out of the first. Which left one match to actually end the year, and WWE swung for something nobody could accuse of being small. 60 minutes, Iron Man rules, anything goes, loser leaves Raw for SmackDown, at bragging rights on October 25th. 11 falls in an hour, back and forth the whole way, Cena and Orton trading the lead through submissions, surprise pinfalls, and a legacy interference spot that briefly swung the score their way. Somewhere in the middle of it, Orton dragged Cena up the entrance ramp, found the arena's pyrotechnics controls, and tried to set them off with Cena lying on the grid, an actual attempt to burn his opponent for a live PAG audience. Cena rolled clear just in time, and when Legacy tried to finish the job later, Kofi Kingston ran out with a steel chair and cleared them out himself. The one moment all year where somebody besides Cena or Orton got to matter. With only seconds left on the clock and the score tied, Cena locked in the STF one final time, and Orton tapped. Ask anyone who watched it live which match from this rivalry they still remember, and it's rarely SummerSlam. It's the clock running out with the title still up for grabs. That's what this rivalry looked like at its best. One more match closed out the year, a short 10-minute sprint on the December 14th episode of Raw to decide the Slammy for Superstar of the Year. Cena won it the same way he'd won most of the others, a routine comeback sequence the crowd could recite along with him by now. And the numbers make the problem pretty obvious. Cena and Orton wrestled each other more than almost any pairing in company history, across singles matches, tags, six-mans, and untelevised house shows. For comparison, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, the defining rivalry of an entire earlier era, faced off on television or pay-per-view 11 times total. Bret Hart and Owen Hart, 5 times. Ric Flair and Sting across 2 promotions, 16. The 10 Cena-Orton singles matches Dave Meltzer actually rated averaged just 2.85 stars, a number that says the volume outran the quality more often than it matched it. The buy rates confirm it. SummerSlam 2007, when the pairing was still new, drew 373,500 buys, against a yearly average around 254,000, a genuine outperformer. By 2009, the 4 Cena-Orton pay-per-views that year averaged 259,500 buys, against a yearly average of 249,222, barely keeping pace with a rivalry that 2 years earlier had been the company's biggest draw. The TV ratings tell basically the same story. Raw's rating sat at 3.90 in 2006, the year before the program formally began. It slid to 3.61 in 2007, then 3.27 in 2008, the low point of the entire stretch, before ticking back up to 3.57 in 2009, even as the late-year buy rates were sagging under the weight of the same 2 names headlining everything. Roughly 16% of every match these two had together made it to a television or pay-per-view screen, house shows included, which dwarfs the single-digit territory Hogan and Savage or Hart and Hart ever reached. None of this means the wrestling got worse. It means WWE kept running its most trustworthy pairing until the audience stopped treating it as an event and started treating it as a Tuesday. None of that erases what made the pairing work while it did. Cena was built as an indestructible moral compass. Hustle, loyalty, and respect turned into a living character, and a hero like that only works if the villain trying to hurt him actually feels dangerous. Commentators reached for Superman and the Joker, or Goku and Vegeta, pure good measured against a villain built entirely to test it. It worked in both directions at once. Every fan who loved Cena had a built-in reason to hate the man attacking him. Every fan who'd grown sick of Cena finally had someone in the building willing to say so with a steel chair. Orton didn't need the whole crowd behind him. He just needed to be whoever was left standing after Cena took the other half of the room. Orton supplied that credibility every time he attacked Cena Sr., slapped a referee to steal a title, or tried to set off pyrotechnics under a man lying helpless on the stage. The company protected that dynamic carefully too. Blame for a bad angle landed on McMahon or the creative team, never on the 2 men executing it. An old rule of the business held here without exception. Punch the institution, protect the performer. It's part of why both men survived a decade of this without the audience ever turning fully on either one. This is more than a story about 2 guys who got booked too often. WWE needed them, so it kept using them. Using them constantly is what wore the shine off. That's what turned SummerSlam 2007's 373,500 buys into a 2009 slate that barely cleared the yearly average. And even with the audience visibly tired of the pairing, WWE still had nobody better to put in that spot. The rivalry survived because the thing that caused the overexposure, a shortage of real alternatives, never actually went away. A big match earns that word by staying rare. Cena and Orton went from a match people waited years for to a match people expected every few months. And the less special it got, the more the company needed it to keep working anyway. I was one of maybe 3 kids in that classroom rooting against Cena, tired of watching him win, convinced these two actually hated each other. I was right about the hate. I was wrong about why it kept happening. WWE running out of better options is what kept these two locked together for 8 years, 1 suspension, 1 injury, 1 hard call at a time, until Cena and Orton were the 2 men left it trusted with the company on their backs. But that's the part worth sitting with on the way out. WWE ended up here because this was the only pairing left standing, not the best one. And it still gave us Breaking Point. It still gave us a title match that came down to 6 seconds on a clock neither man controlled. Nobody chose the fallback feud. We got lucky. It turned out to be one of the best rivalries wrestling ever produced anyway. The handcuffs from Breaking Point are still the whole story in one image. 2 men who never picked each other, bound together anyway. And somehow, we still can't stop watching. Speaking of getting things wrong, John Cena spent most of his career as the most polarizing guy in the building, and a lot of that reputation doesn't actually hold up when you look back at it. That's the next video, how we were wrong about John Cena.